Thank you very much for your testimony. Next witness, Fred Beltran.
Yes. Thank you very much again for having us here. Trying not to repeat some of the things you've already heard. I had a lot of notes and a lot of things were covered already. But I do want to let you know that as of January 17th, 2014, which has been over a year ago, the governor had already proclaimed a state of emergency regarding drought. Okay, that was in January, over a year ago. We started finding out locally through Donna Johnson about the situation, and through the local paper there was some media coverage, and then all of a sudden people started coming out of the woodwork. I mean, it went from 20, 30 people to 200, 300 within probably 2 weeks period. I mean, it was, and so we took some action. As a local nonprofit, we were able to take immediate action. We started getting a lot of donations of 300-gallon totes, and the city was at the time also we pulled in the city into meetings, and they were able to help us fill some of those tanks to the point of 70 a week, which means that they have 2 full days they were filling up tanks out there on the north side and on the south side. So that all happened like August, September. We continued to do bottled water drives and distributions in massive. The county stepped in, and through the Department of Office of Emergency Service, they were able to start getting people to apply for the bottled water program, which also helped. And that took several months also to get it off the ground, even though even today people are not aware or for some reason hesitate to sign up for the bottled water program. I'm not really sure why, but some people are saying that I still have water, but my water quality is not there. And I want to give you a little bit of history. I'm retired from the city of Porterville after 22 years in the engineering department designing water and sewer systems. Prior to that, I spent 5 years with a local engineering company. I helped design the sewer system that's out there, which is Porta Vista Public Utility District, which is probably 90% of these people. 40 years ago, the state declared that an emergency because there was water quality issues. If you look at the map, the concentrating of houses next to each other, it's like a subdivision. One house after another, boom, boom, boom. And you had septic tanks and wells right next to each other. The state came in, funded this program for sewer. They abandoned all the septic tanks out there. And, of course, you still had residual after that. 40 years later now, and I think even since then, they've always had nitrate problems. And we continue, and I think the drought just exacerbated the problem with that nitrate. So I immediately went to the Porta Vista Public Utility District early on to ask them, if they could help out create a water district out there so that we could do it. Said, no, we've tried that once before. We tried this about 10 years ago. We tested, did some test holes. We did some water testing. He says the quantity of water is not out there and the quality of water is not out there. At that time, they also checked with the city of Porterville to see what it would take for the city to sell them water to create this water district. And at the time, obviously it wasn't a drought. It was going to cost them like $54 a month to have water. Well, it was too expensive for them. You got to remember, these people are low-income people, fixed-income people. It's a depressed area. So $54 a month was just like astronomical for them to try to do that. So Porta Vista backed up, says, we're not going to provide a water system. The people don't want the water system. But, now, 10 years, 15 years later, we have this drought. I think somebody had to have stepped up, needed to create that movement again. The city of Porterville, about 45 years ago, tried to annex all that area. They bought a couple of water systems out there, private water systems out there, with the intent to eventually put water out there. Well, when they tried to annex that area, the people resisted in the annexation. So that was dropped, and the city ended up with those private water companies out there, which is probably a couple hundred homes out there. But eventually those wells went bad, so the city had to pipe water from the city all the way out there, which are, I mean, you're talking probably 2 miles out there to feed those water systems that the city had bought. Well, there's presently some water lines that go from the city out there that go directly in front of people's houses. And, you know, some of the people early on had an opportunity to connect to that system. Right now, we were trying to get a lot of these people connected. We've estimated probably about 100 people that can immediately connect to the city water system, but because they're in the county, they can't because of extra jurisdictional issues. And now I think the city's in the process of doing a water survey because they're afraid that if they start providing water to East Porterville, they may jeopardize their system. So everything was going pretty good. I mean, it obviously a lot slower than I'd like to see it go. With seeing the people daily, we were out there taking tanks out, connecting water pumps, handing out water on a daily basis. We were there's stories after stories after stories, just like you heard. I mean, every day, and it's frustrating to see. And I worked for government, so I know how slow it can work. So it's very frustrating to be able to find methods to speed up this process. So, you know, I think at this point in time, I'd like to be able to council, the Port Rican Council, to support a water system out there. I think it lays itself for it. The temporary system is fine, but it's going to take, I don't know, several months for people to get those tanks and pumps on there. And I don't know how many dollars you're going to be spending there when the obvious would be put a permanent water system out there. Now, that doesn't take care of everybody in the county because there are people way outside of the boundaries. But as far as East Porterville goes, it's a given. I mean, they're eventually going to have a water system out there. It's either going to be now or 10 years from now. And right now would be a good opportunity to do it, to not only help them with the drought, but also help them with the water quality. I would guess to say that there's probably 60–70% of those people that have wells out there, their wells are probably already are contaminated, you know, with high nitrates. So to go out and say that you can actually, you know, go out and drill another well and you'll take care of your problem. Yeah, you may get water, but I don't think you'll have your water quality. You're still going to have issues. And you know, the state is in a situation now that they want to provide that good quality water to the people and affordable water. Now's the time to step up and do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Fred, before you step down, if you could just quickly explain some of the charts that you put behind us here.
I've been working with this chart for a while.
We're going to need to get close to a microphone so that the people hear you from. But I know you brought these and you want to show them for something, so I wanted to just so people know what's on them.
Basically, this map represents an aerial, and you can see all the little white marks represent houses, and you can see how clustered this thing is. I mean, it's intense. Your pamphlet or your agenda has a map in there, but you know what? Unless you see it as an aerial, you really don't get a sense of how many people are out there next to each other without water. So, and we've recently created some banners that we're going to put. There's really basically a couple of major streets that enter into this area. One is Dade Avenue. We're going to be putting some banners to advertise where people can get help with water. I think we should have done this months and months ago because some people still don't know where the resources are. Mm-hmm. And I think we put it upon ourselves to go ahead and advertise that. And we may have to go to the radio stations. A lot of people are not speak English, so we need to do a lot of publicity in probably the radio station in Spanish. And the other trifold is when you get a chance to take a look at it, just some of the work we've done. And again, it's some of the work that the Porterville Area Coordinating Council has done, some of the people, and also with Paul. I've been working with Paul almost from the very get-go of this with self-help, and we've developed a system, and it seems to be working really good.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Beltran, for that work. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
And to all our witnesses, thank you for coming. And we're going to call up our next witnesses, but I just wanted to recap some of the points that people shared. I think it's been very helpful because we've heard, that some of these solutions or ideas are not new. Some of these challenges, they exist for a long time. Sometimes the local politics didn't allow some of those solutions to move forward, but we're hoping that because it's hurt so many families so hard right now during this worst of droughts, that hopefully we could bring people together to find those solutions and have real long-term solutions move forward. As you expressed, Mr. Beltran, that these were talked about 10, 15 years ago, and they knew there were crises when people are pumping water out of shallow wells where septic systems are. That's certainly going to present a crisis for those families in terms of water quality.
Yeah, I did want to add that whatever county, state decides to do, we're in a position to help some of these people connect because there may be some fees involved. So we are getting donations and we're saving some of those up. So hopefully we'll be able to help people either pay for some of their fees or even help them with some of their plumbing, because even at that point, you give them that water availability, they may not be able to do some of the work on their own.
Right. And certainly the issues regarding renters, that's who I think we've got to try to find a solution to. That's 40 to 50% of the households there. And your chart really showed how the high density in East Porterville of homes. And I think the number is like almost 900 wells have gone dry. But the number of household units is much more because many of them, as you expressed, relied on one well for maybe 10 homes or 15 homes. So it really shows this is a very severe situation. But I appreciate hearing from the students and the mothers, how people feel being frustrated, how children feel going to school or in their neighborhoods, the impact on animals and our pets as well. This has a lot of ramifications in a lot of different ways, and we were able to hear some of that because of the testimony here today. So I want to thank you all for coming up.
Thank you.
We have our next panel of our local city and county leaders. So we first want to invite Supervisor Alan Ishida and Dennis England with Tulare County, Mayor Milt Stowe, and Councilmember Virginia Garola with the City of Porterville, Charles Rabamad and Eric Lamoureux with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and Darren Polemas with the State Water Resources Control Board. I hope there's enough space for everyone that I called up. Any order? And Alan Ishida. Okay. And we will start with Supervisor Alan Ishida and Senior Administrative Water Resource Analyst for Tulare County, Dennis England. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you. I'm going to defer my time right now to Miss England. And
That's
for the
totally fine.
details.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Denise England, Senior Administrative Analyst, Water Resources for the County of Tulare. And I provided some packets for the committee recapping the information I'm going to provide, as well as some charts and graphs of current conditions. So I just wanted to sort of give an overview of the East Porterville area. It is a community of more than 1,800 homes, the majority of which rely on very shallow private wells. The wells are, we believe there's about 670 wells that are impacted, and we estimate that means approximately 3,000 residents are impacted. East Porterville wells are typically only 20 to 30 feet deep. We do have some deeper wells that have been reported, but predominantly they're the more shallow wells that have been impacted. The community is adjacent to the Tule River, which has historically provided recharge for the wells. However, due to the lack of rainfall and more importantly snowfall in the last few years, the river channel has been dry for much of the year. When water was released this past summer to try to recharge some of those shallow wells, there just wasn't enough water to reach the wells, and that was not successful. As Fred mentioned earlier, the City of Porterville does have water lines that extend through the community in a few locations. There's a rough estimate that there are approximately 100 homes adjacent to a City of Porterville water main that are not currently connected. As Mr. Beltran reported, property owners along those lines were given the opportunity to tie in when they were built, but many of them chose not to. And the drought conditions have negatively impacted the city's water capacity as well, and so the city is not able to just allow those folks to connect. And so our response is really three-pronged. We're looking at near-term, short-term solutions, and that's the household tank program. We're looking at an interim solution, so what is it going to take to tie in those folks that are along as an existing main? And then the long-term sustainable solution would be to extend a water system throughout the community. The short-term is in order to provide hauled water out of the city of Porterville. The city has indicated they need an additional well. That's about a $1.2 million investment. We're looking at using CDAA funds to do that and hopefully leverage some USDA money for our match. The 100 homes would require another additional well, so that's another $1.2 million investment. And then the overall large long-term distribution system, back of the envelope estimates are somewhere around $20 to $30 million, and obviously that's a long 5 to 7 year process to engineer that and get that really in the ground. So our drought response to date has been non-potable filling stations. There's 2 set up. The first was at the fire station, and then there was a second. The water is to be used for sanitation purposes, including cleaning, bathing, and flushing of toilets. The tanks are clearly marked that the water is not for consumption. It's not for drinking or cooking. The water, there's self-service stickers that folks can use to put on their own buckets and barrels that they take back to their homes to ensure safety at their homes, that the water's not being consumed. The PACC has placed their tanks that are non-potable as well. I'm not sure what safety measures are taken to make sure that people are not consuming the water as it comes in the house. But since October, the county has reimbursed the city of Porterville for the cost of filling those tanks through CDAA. We also have a bottled water drinking delivery program that was funded out of the State Water Board's Cleanup and Abatement Fund. We've been doing that since early August. When the initial distribution of emergency water was provided to the East Porterville area, every household that received that emergency supply also received a self-certification form. It's a 1-page, check a couple of boxes, self-certify your income level, mail it back. We do have to have a wet signature, so we do need it back either in the mail or hand-delivered in person. And then that gets folks on the list to receive biweekly deliveries of water from like a company like Sparklights, like if you had water delivered to your home. The non-potable tanks are tested on a regular basis for bacteria to make sure that there's no bacteria growing in the tanks. To date, those tests have come back with the absence of bacteria. So, but again, the water's not safe to drink, and we've let folks know that. CSET mentioned their outreach to community members and the reluctancy not only to receive help, but also to receive that bottled drinking water. For the reasons Mary Alice talked about earlier, not everybody that received a form has turned it back in. We're hopeful that with CSET being in the community and getting building relationships, that we'll receive additional applications and get more people signed up. We also placed the showers in November as the winter months approached. It was obvious that folks, if the water is being hauled from the non-potable station, it's cold and it's not going through the water heaters in the homes, and so the showers were placed so folks could take hot showers. I would just like to point out that since February of 2014, the county has been working with our state partners as well as our local nonprofits that are knowledgeable about water issues regarding private well failures. We knew in February when the county declared our own local disaster, our own local emergency due to the drought, that private well failure was going to be the hardest issue to tackle. It doesn't fit into any traditional funding stream. You can't just pay to drill a new well. Building new systems takes time and a lot of money, and we knew that was going to be an issue. We had initially began discussions with state board staff and drinking water program staff and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research about a community called Munson, which is a very small community, but they had the initial reports of wells that had failed, and so throughout the late spring and early summer months, we had talked with folks to try to figure out, with regulatory and funding entities, to find out what solution would fit. And we proposed things like bladders and temporary water systems and hauled water, and hauled water was shot down early because it's really expensive to do. Bladders and tanks, there was some concern about how do you secure those at a residence and make sure that they're still potable. You can't build a temporary water system because as soon as it becomes a public water system, which is as soon as more than 25 people are being served off of it, you have to meet all of the qualifications to be and the regulations to be a public water system. And so through the Munson process, we really were able to knock things off that weren't going to be feasible or eligible regulatory or funding wise. So through the summer, we also began with self-help and United Way and Community Water Center, and CSET, I believe, was even at the table for one of the meetings. We started talking about, well, could we do a grassroots effort to start trying to raise some funds, some private funds to fund some of these tanks, and self-help got about $50,000 from a local bank, and they were able to start placing a couple of tanks that really was the guinea pigs for the larger countywide project. The three nonprofits have talked about their areas of expertise and what they're doing to help the county get the individual household tanks out to impacted residences. Over the next few weeks to a couple of months, that effort will really be ramped up and more tanks will be set. We've been in negotiations with the City of Porterville to purchase water from them for the tanks in East Porterville. In order to do so, they need additional capacity. So we have had several meetings, and I went out on a tour of the city last Friday to determine where the best location is for their future well, and I think we've narrowed that down. And so hopefully in the next month or so, we'll be able to narrow that down and get started on that project so that we can start getting a supply for those potable tanks. The next step would be to identify a second well location for connecting the 100 households that are adjacent to a water main. And then we'll need to work through how we get a system out in the East Porterville area. Some of the challenges that we've faced are that we've talked a little bit about rental properties. Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Alvarez, who testified earlier, really nicely characterized a common situation, and that's where the property owner is also severely disadvantaged, and they have a second home or a third home that they're renting out just to try to make ends meet. And so those types of landlords, they're living on the same property that's being impacted, and so if we're able to address that, that would be a really great start. There's some that aren't living in the area but that are disadvantaged as well, and so we're trying to categorize the different landlord situations to really address that issue. And then, of course, unable to use the CDA funding to connect residences to the existing water main. In a lot of cases, if we can make that connection directly, it's going to be a lot faster and a lot cheaper than setting a tank and providing expensive hauled water. The next steps for the county will be that we will continue to provide bottled drinking water through the Cleanup and Abatement Fund grant to those that qualify. Residents that are out of water and are owner-occupied will begin receiving the potable tanks and hauled water. Individual households with potable tanks will have potable drinking water, and so they'll be weaned off of the Cleanup and Abatement Fund program of bottled water delivery. And the non-potable tanks will remain in place until either all individual tanks are placed at all residents that are out of water, or I would hope that that wouldn't be the long-term solution for those rental properties. I would hope that we could find another solution for that. The final chart that's in your packet, you can see sort of the picture of how we received reports of dry wells. So we had a few through February through June, a little bit of an uptick in July, and August is really when we started hearing about the East Porterville area, and then as you can see, September and October we've had an uptick as well, and then this is sort of the reported wells over time, and these are countywide figures.
Okay, thank you very much. I have some questions for the county of Tulare, but I'll first let the Mayor Stowe and Councilmember Virginia Garolo of City of Porterville, because my questions will be for both the city and the county. So if you guys could provide your testimony.
Thank you very much for your invitation. As you've heard, East Porterville and Tulare County are in desperate need for water. And I can't give enough credit to the Beltrans and Ms. Johnson for their efforts, what they've done for the residents of East Porterville. And, you know, in August 1st, I think the meeting was, we had a group of citizens from East Porterville that come into our chambers saying they need help with water because they don't have water. And the City Council, we took it upon ourselves to help when we could until the county was able to put a program in place for these residents. And I want to thank all the agencies that stepped up to help these residents in need of water, particularly Tulare County and State's OES and our City Porterville staff. They did a remarkable job trying to put this together. Like I said, it's frustrating because it's been 8 months, but we know how things work. It takes time, but we're getting to the point where I think we're about to solve the short-term problem. And the East Porterville is currently, you know, we're in the process of making them in our sphere of influence for the city. And as Ms. England said, you know, a well is probably within the next month or so with all the help of the agencies that are around. And if we possibly build this well, that would certainly help connect those residents to city water. And the committee, this committee certainly can expedite the situation with the CEQA process and special funding that they need to get this well drilled so we can get them water immediately. However, you know, I think, you know, we can solve this and we can drill wells throughout the county, throughout the state, but the good Lord doesn't give us rain, we're not going to have water. I think we're going to, you know, we're going to have to think out of the box, and the long-term solution, I think, is, you know, we have a tertiary treatment plant that we can save millions of gallons of water per month just in Porterville alone. If we have one of these plants to treat this water and recycle the water under purple pipes, we can, you know, water all our landscaping, school grounds, parks, and things that people want to, you know, we want to keep it green. I'm sure most people want to keep their lawns and green, but we can use this water. And I think this is the solution to do so. And this committee, if you're taking this serious, I think you really want to look into something like that and provide some kind of special funding so we can have a long-term solution. And again, I thank you for the invitation to be here, and I appreciate, you know, your concern of these Porterville residents and the Tulare County residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gurrola, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thank you, Chair, for the invitation to be here today, and to the committee members as well. I'm going to take my story from a little bit different perspective. And we keep saying that East Porterville is the epicenter. It is an epicenter. It is an emergency. If this epicenter were in the Silicon Valley, I think there'd be a completely different approach. We have individuals in East Porterville who have pride. You've already heard it. They don't want to discuss what's going on. They don't want to discuss that or disclose that, oh, I don't have water. How am I going to take care of my kids? I went into East Porterville when I got a call from a group of residents who wanted to speak to me in regards to getting city water. So checked out the area and found that they were outside of our urban area boundary, our sphere of influence, and so therefore we really could not do anything. It took a while. It was a challenge because, one, you had to educate and inform individuals of what all that meant. Well, I know that there's pipes right down the street. Why can't I connect to them? And explaining that was very difficult and very frustrating for the residents as well. But we got through it, and they understood that it was going to take time to get to a point where we would be able to do something. And, of course, the money. People have been very patient. Tony Alvarez had spoken to him. He was here today. He's carrying buckets, you know, trying to get water. I started getting texts and emails. A woman who her well went dry. She's outside our area. Had her son in the hospital at Children's Hospital, and had her other children at home. She was besides herself. She didn't know what to do. The individuals in East Porterville, as I said, have a lot of pride. And we started the task force committee. Actually, the city directed staff to start a task force so that we can have a discussion on the drought. And the county and other agencies were brought in. Elva had already been working with people through the PAC. Donna had come to City Council and had been working with people. But it was time now for the government to come in, for local officials, for local agencies to come in. And we still sit around. Almost a year later, they don't have water. There's still, and I know a permanent solution takes time, but we need to look at this, and the state needs to step in and help. These are residents of California, the great state of California, and they have no water. They live outside of our sphere of influence. Connecting a pipe, a simple pipe. Baldomero Rodriguez, who is our engineer, has worked to try to figure out ways to do this. Our city staff has. Sorry if I'm emotional. I walked the streets of East Porterville when the task force started. Alicia, Paul, and I, and 25 other volunteers went out and surveyed 200 people in a matter of 5 hours. And this was in August. We did a survey. Alicia worked out a survey. We all got together and did that. And I want you to hear what the comments that we got back. Head of households going out of town to look for work. They can't find work here because they're farm workers. Think about this. You're a farm worker. You're coming home. You have chemicals on you. What do you want to do? You want to take a shower. Get that off. There's no water. They've got to go to a 300-gallon tank. As one family member told me, I've got 6 in my family. How am I going to get them all bathed? Residents are unfamiliar with the well conditions. They don't understand. Not because they're not familiar with this process. Residents who are living in rentals, many of you already heard that. They're not sure if they really want to answer a survey because they may get into trouble by their landlords. A lot of homes in East Porterville and many homes are connected to more than or to one well. A lot of people living in one home because they have insufficient income to be able to live in multiple homes. We had up to 10 people living in a home. So this is their answers. This is what they're living with. I can turn on my tap, my faucet, flush my toilet, but there isn't a day that goes by when I think about, if I had to bring in that bucket, how difficult would that be? Again, I apologize for my emotion, but I'm emotionally involved. These are people. They deserve the basic necessities that we all enjoy. The city of Porterville has gone forward to try to help. We need help with the sequel exemptions. We need the tertiary treatment plants, as was discussed. We're not going to point fingers. I'm not going to point fingers. But how do we do this if I had to do it over again? The task force, and most importantly, communication. Surveying an action plan with both short and long term that's discussed among all the key players, and bring the residents in and ask them. Ask them, what do they need? And provide the information back to them because they feel that they're out in the dark. I ask that the chair and committee look at this and the state of California and its great wisdom. Look at this epic center, if it's truly an epic center, and start doing something to help. The wells are needed. City of Porterville is willing to do that, but we have to be whole for our own residents who are also paying water. We need to maintain our residents, but we are certainly ready to help.